Alrighty, we're going to do a quick review of the Ruger SR22 handgun. This review won't involve any shooting, so we won't be able to comment on the actual functioning of the weapon. Just first glances, you can look at the gun and tell it looks a lot like the Walther. Aesthetically, Ruger did copy the P22 in the design, but you know that's typical Ruger. Half of the guns Ruger makes are actually just visual copies of somebody else's design. Function-wise, we're going to go through the list of all the good features first, and then we'll hit the bad things and the whatevers. So we'll start top to bottom. Sights. Sights are excellent on the Ruger SR22. They're dovetailed, adjustable, and colored. So what that means is they're dovetailed. Rather than being fixed, built into the slide, or staked and screwed in from the bottom, they're actually a cut made into the slide, and then the sights are a separate piece that are pushed in from the side into the slide. That's excellent for a number of reasons. First off, you'll be able to replace the sights if you want, so you can put in high visibility fiber optics for outdoor shooting, competition stuff. You can put in tritium night sights for if you're using this as a personal defense weapon for some reason, or other adjustable night sights if you decide that these aren't precise enough. And you can also put more rounded off carry style sights that won't snag nearly as much. It's also great for if you decide to use your SR22 as a suppressor host in the future. With 22 cans, they tend to be quite a bit fatter than the actual barrels and slides of 22s. So with some 22 models, such as this one, if you put a suppressor on it now, when you look down the sights, you'd actually just be staring at the back of your can because your suppressor would be so fat. So with a lot of guns like this that are used as suppressor hosts, after you get the thread barrel in your can, you're going to end up pushing out these sights and replacing them with taller ones. So the front sight post, for example, would be about that tall. So when you look down your sights, you're actually looking over the top of your suppressor and at the target, as opposed to just staring at the back of your metal can. The fact that they're adjustable is great. A lot of Ruger 22s in the past have had a tendency of starting out with just standard fixed sights, and you kind of get stuck with trying to guess where your aiming point is if the sights are exceedingly far off. With the adjustable, these are screw shifted for windage and elevation. Also, the sights are colored differently. Maybe a little hard to tell in this video, but the front sight post is actually yellow and the rear sight dots are white. This is actually a trend that's pretty common in the tritium night sight industry right now. They're doing a lot of different color front and rear sights. It's just a little easier when you bring up the gun instinctively. You'll be able to put the different color dot in between the two rear ones as opposed to trying to line up three identical white dots. It's just slightly faster, slightly more intuitive. Alright. Still at the top, the loaded chamber cutout. In the back of the slide here, right behind the barrel, you can see that there's a little cutout. So when you look straight down from the top of your gun, if there was a round in the chamber, we would see a little bit of gold-colored brass from the rim of the case. That lets us know that there's a round in the chamber. That's good because you'll be able to tell when you have a round. We'll discuss why that may be a drawback later. Slide serrations. The slide serrations on the SR22 are excellent, both front and rear slide serrations. So if you're used to racking your weapon from the front here, you'll be able to do that easily. The slide serrations are very large, very broad, not sharp, and there's no silly proprietary design that'll cut into your skin, just standard vertical lines. The extractor. On the SR22, the extractor is excellent. One of the more common fail points for 22s is actually a weak extractor. So you can see here that they put a very large, very beefy extractor on the side of the slide there. For a lot of 22s, Remingtons are notorious, Smith & Wessons are notorious. The little metal clip ends up pushing over the cartridge lip and then ends up pulling the cartridge back out of the barrel. Well, that clip has a tendency to break very easily. The extractor will have a tendency to chip, but with that very large one, as long as the metallurgy is good, that should look like a very, very good, well-designed piece that will prevent a lot of stuck cases in the chamber or having your extractor chipped and having your weapon down for months at a time while you're waiting for a replacement or a fix. Alrighty, the barrel ramp. If you look at the barrel here coming from the magazine, the barrel ramp is exceedingly large and very generous. That's great. A lot of 22s, especially different bullet designs, will have a lot of different shapes and profiles. So by making that barrel ramp very wide and very large, the contour will make rounds feed from the magazine much, much easier, much smoother compared to some other designs. A lot of soft lead 22 bullets will come off the magazine, hit that barrel lip, and end up deforming pretty badly. It'll mess up your accuracy and reduce your reliability. Alrighty, rail cuts on the front of the frame here. Ruger has put 3, not just 1, Picatinny cuts so that you can put accessories like this Streamlight TLR laser and flashlight into the gun. The thing with certain lights and lasers, Streamlight is excellent because they have different sized keys. You can see this is a C key, so I could take this little piece here, take it out and replace it, and I could move this Picatinny slot further forward or back to be able to adjust my firearm. With some firearms, they only have a single rail cut, so you're kind of stuck with where the accessory has to mount. It can only mount in that position. Can't mount here or here or here, anywhere in that in-between area. With both adjustable keys and multiple rail slots, you have a little more freedom with your frame accessories. Alright, safety, size, and color. The safety on the rear of the weapon is very large, unlike the SR9 and SR40 safeties. It's very broad, very well textured and contoured. It's got kind of that trapezoidal pyramid shape, and it also has the very bright red painted area underneath it. Excellent design, very large visual, very easy to actuate, even weak hand, strong hand. Very, very simple. The SR9 and SR40 safeties were much smaller, took a lot of flack, a lot of criticism, because they were much harder to work, especially weak hand. The safety is ambidextrous on both sides, so as I just showed you, both right-handed and left-handed shooters can use it, and ambidextrous magazine release. The magazine release here at the rear of the trigger guard is located on both sides of the firearm. We'll discuss the magazine release design later. That's actually in the drawbacks list. The slide stop texture design. A lot of manufacturers make a slide stop which has no texturing or contour to it. Ruger has again done a little trapezoidal shape here, which is very good for both pushing up and downward whenever you need to with a lot of grip. Unfortunately, some slide stops on certain handguns are either flat or they don't have very much grip to them, so it's a little harder to actuate the direction you want it to go. No disassembly tool. One of the things that you folks that are comparing this gun to a Walther P22 will notice is that this gun, you won't need any type of special rod to put into the guide rod to be able to reassemble it. This firearm, as you can see in my disassembly video, comes apart with just your hands and reassembles the same way. You don't need to have any special tools, any keys, anything like that. That's one of the big advertising points with handguns nowadays. Magazine follower. The magazine follower is excellent on the SR22 with a lot of older designs, some still around. The magazine follower isn't anything that you can grab, so you have to sit there and force rounds into the top here, and you may need a magazine loader once you start getting to the bottom. Ruger has actually put a special grip on the right-hand side of the magazine. It's this large piece here with the grip texturing so that you'll be able to just simply pull the magazine follower. Unfortunately, this should be a standard in the industry, but it's not yet. There's still a lot of 22 handguns where you can't manually drop the follower, but it's very helpful for loading, especially people with less thumb strength. Magazine floor plates. The SR22 comes with 2 magazines, which is in itself a plus, and 2 magazine floor plates. The standard low profile design, which is going to be a little closer to the actual weapon. As you can see here, it's going to fit a little more flush to the gun, and they give you the standard lift magazine here, which is going to give you a little more room for those of us with larger hands. It allows you to keep a little more of your pinky on the firing area as opposed to hanging it off. Alright, now we're going to go into the negative aspects of the gun. We're going to go back to the loaded chamber indicator first, since I mentioned that already. Since you have that little gap right there, the rim of the cartridge is exposed. Now, the loaded chamber cutout actually started on centerfire handguns with 9mm and 40s, where you almost never have a ruptured case at the base of the cartridge. It may happen sometimes in centerfire calibers, mostly with Magnum rifle cartridges. When people reload the cartridges a lot, either the belt or the rim will have a tendency to weaken and separate, but very, very rarely on pistols. So a lot of handguns, for example, the Smith & Wesson Military and Police, some of the other Rugers, will have a cutout there where you can just look down and see the bottom of the brass casing. Now on a 22, this is slightly different because you're actually looking at the rim of the case, and for a rimfire calibers, that actually contains the primer. With rimfire calibers, especially 22 long rifle, the ammunition is really cheap. Case ruptures are actually very, very common in 22. A lot of times when you have any malfunction like a out-of-battery explosion, the round will ignite slightly early. The round will actually then load the rim of the case backwards. With this fully locked breech, you probably shouldn't have much of a problem, but it may be a slight issue with some venting gases if the 22 rim decides to separate or rupture at that point where you conveniently have that little cutout in the slide so that you can look down in there, because that's where the primer and the ignition is all going to be coming out. Now with your standard grip, that's going to be well forward of your face or your eyes, but as always, wear eye protection, and if Ruger has any problems with that design, they'll change it. But I have never seen a rimfire firearm with an exposed rim like that. Very interesting design. I personally wouldn't trust it much. Now on to the first real and very large glaring drawback of the SR22. The magazine release is horrible on this design. It is absolutely atrocious, and Ruger should immediately redesign this weapon because this is going to frustrate a lot of shooters. A lot of people on the firing line at the range, at home, are really going to be put off from this Ruger product and in general because of this feature. This is the magazine. I'm going to hold the weapon behind the magazine release so you can tell that I'm not using the magazine release, and I'm going to try and put the magazine in the weapon. I pushed it completely flush, let go, nothing. The magazine did not latch. Okay, so we're going to try again. We're going to push, no, okay, no. I'm going to push the magazine in. Okay, my magazine does not seem to want to lock in. Okay, there we go. I gave it a real good smack and it locked in. Let's try it again. No. Okay, that was good. It's a little better now. The problem with the Ruger magazine release is you need to push forward on it. Unfortunately, it's a very poor design, and when you close up your magazine, you're going to be able to tell that there's a lot of forward and backward play in the magazine. So, if you're just casually trying to put the magazine in the gun, you push it in, and your magazine kicks out, it never latches. It's because you're pushing on the back of the weapon. So unfortunately, there is far too much play in the magazine release and the magazine in this gun. So when you want to put your magazine into your SR22 and not have it kick out, you need to put the magazine in, push it all the way up, and then drag it forward. By pushing up and then dragging forward, you're making sure that that magazine release has enough caught lip to be able to retain the magazine. If you just push it straight up and then pull back down, your magazine will just drop right out of the gun. So remember, push up and drag forward. Kind of silly, but unfortunately it's a poorly designed setup. Alright, the next major downside of the Ruger SR22 is the hammer. As you can see, this little part of the exposed spur commander style hammer has these little ridges cut into it so that you get a little bit of a grip. That's an excellent idea. Unfortunately, they didn't extend the ridges to the top of the hammer for some reason. It doesn't come into contact with the sight or anything on the slide. It wouldn't have cost Ruger very much more, if anything, to have actually put the ridges onto the top of the hammer. But as somebody who uses 1911s and single action revolvers a lot, the hammer is actually fairly difficult, and you don't have a lot of purchase room just on that little tiny bit at the back of the hammer. So when you're trying to thumb the gun back, it isn't nearly as easy as it should be if Ruger had just taken the time to put the serrations all the way over the top of the hammer. No ambidextrous slide stop. Ruger decided that 2 out of the 3 of the controls, the magazine release and the safety, were going to be ambidextrous, but they decided that they were going to leave the slide stop only on the left-hand side of the gun. This makes not an awful lot of sense. You figure that they're going to make everything else ambidextrous. You might as well make the gun fully ambidextrous and let left-handed shooters completely use their dominant strong side hand to operate the weapon, but instead they decided to keep the slide stop on the left-hand side of the gun only. Other manufacturers have been able to put the slide stop on the right-hand side, so it's not something that Ruger is unable to do. They just didn't design it that way. Okay, next thing, grips. Ruger sends the SR22 with interchangeable grips, keeping with the market. Of course, everybody has interchangeable grips. You have to have them now. They come with 2 sizes. This is the standard, which I've taken off and replaced with the large one. The larger one adds a little fatter area in the back strap. The one thing about the grips that makes me wonder is they're actually not a very good design. You only get 2 different sizes, and you are instructed in the Ruger manual to remove them by literally removing the magazine, taking the grip, and pulling it downward, removing the detents on the inside of this grip. It may be a little hard to see, but there's a little circle cut into that soft grip there, which actually retains on pins on the frame. What you need to do, according to the Ruger manual, is take the grip and then just give it a good tug and pull the grip right off. Well, that's interesting in that the little soft rubber plastic, I'm thinking this is probably plastic, but maybe rubber, this little piece here is actually going to wear away, so eventually that little circle is going to turn into a little channel there. Ruger's factory manual says that once you remove and put on the grip so many times, you break them in, but once you break them in, they will have a little bit of wear, but it's not excessive wear. Personally, I don't think that's such a great idea. I don't like being able to only put the grips on a certain number of times before they actually lose their locking mechanism there. So unfortunately, they should have gone with a mechanism that doesn't wear itself out and break itself in, because after a while of swapping the grips back and forth, you'll actually loosen them up and they'll slide freely. So my recommendation is try the small grip, try the larger grip, and then try not to go back and forth between them, because you will wear out that channel and that grip, and the grips will become slightly looser. The last downside of the Ruger is no barrel threading from the factory as is. Ruger's factory manual says you can order a factory threaded barrel and you can replace it. That involves you getting into the screw in front of the trigger here, removing that, and removing and replacing a fixed barrel. But for this price point, you don't get a factory thread barrel. This is a huge negative for Ruger, and it goes into the next point, which is price. The SR22 is actually not that incredibly well priced. Again, a lot of people online, a lot of the opinion online is this is an excellent value. It's not a bad handgun, but as far as value goes, there's a lot of other things out on the market. Right now, unfortunately, because of the supply and demand economics, these guns are slightly harder to find than a lot of the other more common models. 1911s and 22 are running about $300 some. This gun here in the store runs about $350. A Walther of similar configuration is going to be the same. Basic black model without any of the fancy finishes in the frame. Without having the factory threaded barrel right there to go with it, this Ruger SR22 is immediately behind the rest of the pack as far as all those 1911 22s, the Walther P22s, and everybody else making a 22 that intends it to be a suppressor host. So unfortunately, that's going to be an expensive upgrade for those of you all who want to run it as a suppressor host or anything else like that, because you're going to have to buy the factory threaded barrel from Ruger. Who knows what the price on that is going to be yet? They haven't sold them. And you're going to need to get into the trigger guard, remove the fixed barrel, and then worry about removing and fixing a barrel to the frame every time you want to switch back and forth, or at least once to upgrade your gun. Okay. Last point, and this is neither a good thing or a bad thing as far as design traits go. It's kind of some people don't like it, and one of those people is me. The grip serrations here, the front trigger guard is serrated. This is not something that Ruger's done on any of their previous gun. The other SR series, the 9s, the 40s don't have it, the Ps don't have it. A lot of the guns don't have it. For some reason, Ruger has jumped on the bandwagon of putting that little extra texturing on the front of the grip to encourage people to, for some reason, do some kind of super cool ninja double trigger finger grip and put their weak hand, support hand, index finger on the outside of the trigger guard. Now, for those of you guys that think Glocks and XDs are great guns, you probably think that your trigger guard serrations are an excellent idea, and you go around shooting your gun like this with a double trigger finger or something. For some reason, I have yet to see, a lot of competition 1911 shooters put that serration on there. They usually, put some checkering onto the front strap, but you'll never see it on the front trigger guard. Unfortunately, Ruger has decided to be one of the companies that decides to support bad habits and started to texture the front of this grip here and encourage people to have poor shooting technique. Not really a negative design trait, but unfortunate that Ruger has decided to start doing that, something they haven't done on any of their previous handgun designs. Alrighty, and that was our basic brief review of the Ruger SR22 handgun.